Well, here are two more institutions that are under fervent attack in this country, the Second Amendment and an objective press. This week, CNN received something called a Cronkite Award. You didn't win, but they did. And they won for a full-blown propaganda event that they staged after last year's Parkland shooting. It was a town hall on gun violence. It was a transparent excuse to ambush anyone who supports the Second Amendment and denounce them on national television, which is what happened.
I think what you're asking about is the assault weapons ban.
Yes, sir.
So let me be honest with you about that one. If I believed that that law would have prevented this from happening, I would support it. But I want to explain to you why it would not.
Can you tell me right now that you will not accept a single donation from the NRA in the future? I wish the NRA lady I could have talked to, because I would ask her how she can look in the mirror, considering the fact that she has children.
Let me answer the question. Let me answer the question. You can shout me down when I'm finished, but let me answer Emma's question. I would have done everything in my power to prevent that.
You just told this group of people that you are standing up for them. You're not standing up for them until you say, I want less weapons.
Such demagogues. CNN did that. Dana Loesch is a spokesman for the NRA. She was at that town hall. You just saw the tape, and she joins us tonight. It's upsetting to watch that tape because it is so unfair. It's a mob basically screaming at you. What was it like to be there?
Well, Tucker, thanks for talking about this. Well, we've learned so many things since that time, right? Especially with Scott Israel on that stage.
That's right.
I don't know how to describe it. When we found out that the town hall was taking place, I believe it was on a Wednesday, I found out that I was going there Tuesday. I found out that I was going to be asked questions that afternoon while on the plane. And it wasn't until I got there that I found out that I was going to be on stage, and then later on stage with Scott Israel. And they actually cued me to walk out into the arena to a Black Eyed Peas song. And that's some of the footage. That's after the cameras stopped rolling with CNN. What CNN didn't tell people is that they allowed and invited politicians to come up on stage and electioneer. Scott Israel was able to make a big O electioneering speech before this even began, in which he already started deflecting blame by putting it on me. It was treated as this, I think, for ratings. They tried to stylize this to make it most emotionally impactful. I question the ethics of them putting it on this way. This wasn't, Tucker, this wasn't a journalistic endeavor. They had this town hall literally titled, it was called Stand Up, the Students of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Demand Action. That's not a journalistic endeavor. That is not a journalistic enterprise. That's advocacy.
Well, I wouldn't question the ethics. This is flat out unethical. It's wrong. I can't imagine why they'd win whatever dumb award they won. They should be ashamed of what they did. I mean, people were really hostile toward you. How did you feel? I mean, what was that like?
I've never been in a situation like that. I've never been in a situation where I had someone rush me from behind and try to get me, and a member of my detail grabbed them. I mean, I showed up in good faith to have a discussion about the issue at hand. And it wasn't just this town hall either. I mean, you'll remember, Tucker, even after this, that particular network allowed to stand unchallenged on their airwaves accusations about not just my integrity as a person and as a mother, but also millions of law-abiding gun owners all across the United States. Their integrity was questioned. Their parental genuineness was questioned. They were questioned as sane people simply because they thought differently. What they did, what this town hall did, was set dialogue back by, I don't know how much. It pushed dialogue back. It was an embarrassing display of bias, and they should feel ashamed instead of backpatting themselves for this. I mean, honestly, one last thing, Tucker, for them to say that this advanced the national conversation on gun control is like saying the Salem witch trials advanced the conversation on women's rights. That's exactly what this was like. It was an embarrassment, and they should be ashamed.
And to do this just days after a mass murder, to leverage that tragedy the way they did, they should be ashamed. I agree with you 100%. Thanks very much for telling us what that was like. It's disgusting.
Well, my next guest has plenty of experience getting information out of Peter Strzok, or at least trying.
Did you write it? Did you write that?
I did write that, sir.
Okay. Were you under duress?
Political expression engaging in hyperbole. That text in no way suggested that I or the FBI would take any action to influence the candidacy of
Agent Strzok. That is a fantastic answer to a question nobody asked.
Yeah. Former House Oversight Committee Chair, former prosecutor, and Fox News contributor Trey Gowdy joins me live. Congressman, good to see you.
You too, Ed. How are you?
What's it like to hear that played back, where Peter Strzok, under oath, told you to your face he didn't try to do anything to influence the election?
Well, Ed, I mean, I'm not a big fan of public hearings. I'm much more of a fan of the deposition. You just made reference to a line of questioning that Johnny Ratcliffe engaged in. I read the deposition again today. The most constructive information we got from Peter Strzok is when we were behind closed doors, no time limits, could ask whatever we want. That's where the real information came. Listening to that, the insurance policy. I mean, being pressed on that. The most charitable view of what they meant by the insurance policy is they had a source. They had a confidential informant that they didn't want to burn. And I would invite you to use this analogy. If you got a drug source, you got a confidential informant, you're not going to use that source to burn Jeff Spicoli in Fast Times, but you might to get Pablo Escobar.
Right.
So their analysis was, we're not going to burn this source because we don't think Donald Trump is going to win. So lay aside their poor election forecasting for a moment. Guess what? He did. So if you have a source that has information or evidence that the leader of the free world is an agent of Russia, come on with it. Give it to us. Your concern that you were burning a source on somebody who couldn't win, that's over.
Here we are more than 2 years later.
Give us the information.
They haven't come out with it more than 2 years later, Congressman. You mentioned John Ratcliffe. Yeah, go ahead.
There is no information because there is nothing. There is no source.
So, John Ratcliffe, you mentioned the questioning. We've got part of that graphic where basically he pressed and said, did Special Counsel Mueller or anyone with the Special Counsel's team, did they come to you, Peter Strzok, and ask you about whether any of this evidence, you know, the insurance policy and all of that had any impact on the election? And Peter Strzok, under oath, says no. Why hasn't Bob Mueller or any other investigative authority gone to him and gotten to the bottom of this insurance policy?
Ed, because I think you and I just got to the bottom of it. The insurance policy is Lisa Page, Peter McCabe, and Andy McCabe and Peter Strzok all sitting in a room saying, look, he's not likely to win. But upon the remote chance that he is, we have an insurance policy, which is this FISA investigation. It's a counterintelligence investigation that we launched in July. That was their insurance policy. They just never thought he was going to win.
But doesn't that suggest the Mueller probe? The Mueller probe, was it started with a lie?
I view the Mueller probe as looking into what Russia did to this country in 2016. That part is not a lie. The second part of what Mueller is doing is with whom, if anyone, did they do it. I've seen no indictments, no convictions on the crime of collusion, in part because it's not a crime. But let's say conspiracy to hack the DNC server, conspiracy to hack Podesta's emails. I've seen no indictments of any Americans, much less Trump campaign officials, on either one of those. So, yeah I think Mueller, Russia, yes. Collusion, no.
Got it. Congressman, real quick, I want to be fair because we've been going around about this transcript, going after Peter Strzok. His attorney put out this statement, quote, Pete welcomes the release of the transcript, contrary to the impression that the president's allies in Congress tried to create with their selective and often inaccurate leaks. Pete, at all times, the attorney says, discharged his duties honorably, patriotically, and without regard to his personal political opinions. True or false?
That's why you hire lawyers, so you can pay them to say what nobody else in the world would say. I actually do think the transcript should be made public. I'd love for Jerry Nadler to release every bit of it and let the American people see whether or not Peter Strzok is a patriot. Judge for yourselves.
I mentioned this at the top. Barack Obama, as president in 2016, sat down with her own Chris Wallace and was pressed about whether there was any interference by the Obama Justice Department, who was supporting Hillary Clinton, essentially the Obama team. Was there any interference with this FBI investigation on the email and other matters? Here's what he said.
I guarantee that there is no political influence in any investigation conducted by the Justice Department or the FBI, not just in this case, but in any case.
And she will be
full stop, period.
Full stop, period. And yet Lisa Page in another transcript testified again under oath that that same Obama Justice Department told her and others at the FBI, basically, do not prosecute Hillary Clinton. Doesn't that sound like interference?
I don't even have to get to that, Ed. How about what the president said? He said that she had no intent to jeopardize national security. The president himself, not his Department of Justice, he himself, in the middle of an ongoing investigation, said that there was no evidence on the most important evidentiary element, which was intent. He also did it in the IRS targeting scandal. Remember that? He said there was not an ounce of corruption. So that's twice in two high-profile investigations where the top of the executive branch has weighed in. We asked Comey about it. That didn't bother him. Yeah. Of course, when Trump says, can you let Flynn go, that's obstruction of justice. But when the president weighs in, it's not.
I got 15 seconds. John Huber was his prosecutor in Utah. He was supposed to get to the bottom of FBI abuses, whether there was a Russia hoax. What's the deal? Do we need to send a search party out to find him? I haven't heard anything from him.
Well, I mean, prosecutors aren't great at handling media. I think Barr's going to make him do his job. The Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, is going to do his job. I think at some point we're going to know all of what happened in 2016, 17, and 18 as it relates to the department and the Bureau.
We shall see if the Attorney General, William Barr, follows up. Congressman Gowdy, appreciate you coming in with your insight.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Historic river flooding in the Midwest prompting mass evacuations and costing farmers billions of dollars in lost crops and livestock. Now a new system moving east and south could affect the Mississippi and Missouri rivers. As Vice President Pence was in hard-hit Nebraska yesterday with a message for flood victims.
To all the families that have seen their homes flooded, seen livestock lost, who had their lives, their communities upset by these extraordinary floods and severe weather. Our message is this: we're with you.
Mike Tobin is live from Roscoe, Illinois, south of the Illinois-Wisconsin border, where many families are trying to cope with the devastation there. Mike?
And, Sandra, the good news is that the rain we had here overnight wasn't that bad. As I look to the Rock River behind me here and look at the trees here, you can see the watermarks on the trees. So, if anything, it looks like the river is going down just a couple of inches. There's a neighborhood here called Edgemere Terrace that is separated from dry land by all of this flooding. What we've seen are that the kids going to school and even people trying to get to work. We saw Kyle this morning commuting by kayak so he can get out here to dry land, get to a car, and make his way to his construction job. 14 states now are dealing with floods. Hardest hit so far, Iowa and Nebraska. 41 counties in Iowa are falling under the emergency declaration. Iowa is finalizing the application for federal relief. Nebraska is estimating now $1 billion in agriculture will be lost due to livestock killed and crops that won't get in the ground on the time. Nebraska has already submitted the papers for federal relief. 70% of the state now falls under the disaster declaration, and that is where Vice President Mike Pence traveled yesterday with a message to flood victims that help is on the way.
As I assured them, at the President's direction, we will expedite that request to make sure that the families and communities that have been impacted have access to the federal resources and support that is designed for exactly times like these.
And if the snow melt and water runoff weren't bad enough, they're dealing with ice jams in parts of Minnesota. Just like it sounds, the ice makes a big dam and causes the water to back up. Just one of the many problems people are facing out here.